Before we get into things tonight, a couple definitions. You'll hear us use the term ALICE, which is describes people and how they are trying to and their affordability. And so ALICE individuals are asset limited. It's an acronym. Who would ever guess? Income constrained, employed, and working. And but they don't really have the income and resources to afford housing in their communities, or they're really, really strained on a budget for it. So affordable housing is defined as a household paying no more than 30% of its average monthly gross income to pay for housing. And then we're going to use affordable and attainable interchangeably tonight. So you may hear somebody say attainable, you may see somebody affordable, but other than that, I think things are pretty self-explanatory, and if you need questions, we have 9 people who are glad to answer them. We're going to try and cover everything. We understand the Johnson County Housing Coalition is, our goal is to have a diversity of housing, and I think when I've seen a lot of the plans that have been looked at by the communities and these individuals, we've seen a lot of attempts to build a diversity of housing. We also see some people don't understand why you need a variety of housing. We have a housing problem. There's a huge mismatch between between what people want and what's on the market. And so this is household income. Red is indicated as the shortage, and green indicates a surplus. And the darker it gets, the proportionally stronger. That was supposed to pause. And so that is from the Johnson County, or that is from the Central Indiana Housing Study, where that came from. And you can see it doesn't really matter whether you're a renter, whether you're an owner, whether you're making a lot of money or no money. It's hard to find housing that you're looking for. So you've got people down here that are $200,000 or more, and there's 16,000 houses shortage in Central Indiana of people who are wanting a 2-bedroom. So there's a mismatch. And that's kind of one of the things we want to talk about too tonight is housing in all range as the world has changed, as people's desires have changed. It hasn't really caught up with the housing market. Just on June 17th, the State of the Nation's Housing Report is produced every year by Harvard University's Joint Center for Housing Study, issued a report that said persistent affordability challenges and rising economic uncertainty are hurting the housing market. And I think it's hurting everywhere. If you want to try to buy a house or you want to find an affordable rent. Or even, I've been to meetings where people are proposing very high-end apartments and people show up to object to them. All housing is good housing, as one planner once told me. He said, what happens is you build fancy apartments, expensive apartments, people move up into those, and that leaves the middle apartments vacancies. And people from the lower part move up, and then all of a sudden you get lower rent apartments or more affordable apartments that come open as well. So I can start off with the first question. What's the biggest challenge to building a variety of housing types that you're facing?
So I can chime in. Hi.
Should be turned on.
Hi. I'm Andrea from Hand. So we are a nonprofit that actually does build affordable housing. And one of the biggest challenges, we build typically duplexes or townhomes, multiple units that are connected. And most of the zoning in Hamilton County, where we're based, but this is very true all over Indiana, and the need exists all over Indiana. Most of the zoning in a community allows you to build a single family detached home, right? That's the American dream, your little 2, 3, 4-bedroom home on a cul-de-sac. That's can be built without going through a public process. And anytime you have to go through a public process to get the zoning changed, then that invites people who don't really know much about any of this to come out and say, we hate that, we don't want it, it's ugly, and that is a disincentive, right? Builders want to build what they know they can build, where they know they can build it, and they don't want to have to go through a painful public process to try to justify building something that they know the community needs.
So one of the things that we've experienced in Franklin is the developers and the builders come in and they'll tell us, well, this is what the market is showing that you need, because these are the things that are selling. But if you only have one type of housing, your market analysis is only going to show that those types of houses are selling. So if somebody doesn't come in and take the leap of faith to try to do move-in homes or the missing middle or executive homes and takes that chance, our market's research is never going to change. So that's one of the hardest things, is just fighting the market itself.
Brad, I'm going to call you. You're the Director of Housing Insights at MIBOR, and you've put some slides together and put some information together. So tell me what you see as far as what people really want, and when people walk into a real estate office, they go, I'm looking for this. What aren't they finding?
So I'll give you this kind of anecdote. We did a survey last year of our membership, and we asked how many of them had a client in the last year who didn't move because they couldn't find the housing product type that they wanted. 70% of people said that they had a client who would have moved but couldn't find what they wanted on the marketplace. So there is a big need up and down the scale, and a big need up and down the product price, the product types as well. There's a lot of people that would like to downsize. They're finding out that they might be able to downsize in the actual size of the structure, but they're not downsizing in the price. And then for all things being equal, they end up kind of staying put, and that just continues to kind of clog up the natural flow of the housing market. There's a little bit of, kind of want to piggyback off of the two things that were just said. Developers and builders are like water in a sense. They're going to flow to the place of least resistance. And so they're going to build what they know they can get through. And when they have to come forward with a project and they face remonstration because it's a product that hasn't been introduced to the market before, that's a cost that they have to hold as well. There's cost in capital, time. If they have to go back and redraw things 2 or 3 times, like those costs don't go away. As much sometimes as it's easy to share blame all over, builders and developers aren't charities. You know, they want to make them.
Some of us are.
Some of us are. Some people are. That's true. But at the end of the day, you still have to pay bills,
Sure,
and still have to, so it's a really difficult thing. It's very hard to find the entry level home. The starter home doesn't really exist anymore, and if it's existing in size, it doesn't exist in price anymore. Kind of the start case in point would be if you look at Broad Ripple. Broad Ripple used to be the starting point for a lot of people. You get into one of the bungalows for $100,000 and you stay there a couple of years and then you move on. Well, now the $100,000 bungalows are $400,000 bungalows. And so it just gets really hard to be able to meet the price point and the size. And some of that's land use. Some of that's how things are zoned. Some of that's just the politics of the game. But it's unfortunately not one thing. It's the housing market kind of suffers a death by 1,000 cuts. So
one of the things you mentioned, what people demand and what they're looking for, and the market price and things. To purchase a median, the median price, this is May 2026 MIBOR information for Johnson County. Median price for a home in Johnson County is $310,000. And to purchase that home, if you put 30% of your income towards it, you have to make $110,000. And it's probably not a huge house, I would think, at that price, right? 310.
it depends where you, yeah. So here's the other thing too, is there are more people who live alone. And so if you figure, if it takes $100,000 to buy the house, to comfortably afford the house, 2 income households can do that. It's still challenging, especially if you have childcare. God knows that's challenging. But more people, especially younger people, live alone longer, and so it's a lot to shoulder all by yourself. And particularly when we've seen the growth going on with rent too. It's not, I was really blessed where I could rent a house with my wife and the rent was such that you could save money and you could actually save for a down payment. It's really, really hard to now. So.
Anybody have stories of, people looking for any more the crowd or the Amandas of people who looking for a house and just they can't find one that's affordable, and what kind of impact does that have?
So recently, actually, I was talking to a teacher here in Johnson County, and I think a lot of times we just see people move out of the county because they can't afford housing. So her and her husband are getting married this summer, her fiance are getting married this summer. They were looking for a home to share here in Johnson County, and the reality of it is she said, we just can't afford it. It doesn't make financial sense for us. And so she said, we're gonna end up probably purchasing a home in Marion County just because it's cheaper. Or she said, we were also looking in Shelby County. So the reality of it is, and eventually they, she says she's going to come back here, she's going to work, but eventually when you get into a community, right, you start having kids, the reality of it is, she's probably not going to get back to Johnson County, and she's going to establish those roots wherever she decides to live, just like all of us have done. And so the reality of it is our sort of young executive folks that we have coming or trying to come into Johnson County, we're really not going to grasp that group of people because they can't afford the situation. And that was just one. Yeah. That's just one immediate, as of a couple of days ago, example that I heard.
So not unrelated trivia for your next trivia night. The average age of a first-time home buyer now is 40.
Yeah.
And in Hamilton County, the fastest growing county in the state for many, 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 many years, 5 of our 6 school districts have declining enrollment because young families can't afford to move there. They can't buy their first home till they're 40. So they're planning their roots somewhere else. And some may say, oh, well, so they'll plant their roots somewhere else. We got plenty of people here. But you have to think about who is being excluded. And many of the folks who the current housing prices are excluding are folks who built the county, right? Who, if not for these folks, there wouldn't be, it's their fault that people want to live here and housing's so expensive. So, I just think that's interesting to think about. Schools are such a huge driver of why people want to live in a community, but then when you price them out of living in that community, what happens?
So my experience is a little bit different because I work with 16 to 25-year-olds who are experiencing or at risk of homelessness. And so typically they're not looking to buy a house, but they're looking to find somewhere that they can rent. And what we're finding is that even though we are working with them to get employment, teaching them budgeting and financial literacy skills, even the most successful of our clients are really struggling when it comes time to actually be able to find a place to rent. We have had to have a lot of clients move out of the county, which is really sad because the whole time we're working with them to get their employment here, their existing support system, their medical care, their mental health care, all established here. And then we're finding that we have to move them somewhere else when they finally are ready to move into their own apartment. And for a typical young person, sometimes making those, lower income jobs is okay because they still have the stability and support of their family. But for the youth and young adults that we are serving, that is not the case. And so it really is challenging for us to find any affordable rentals at all in the whole county.
I think you look at the graph that we have up on the table. Johnson County is the 6th most expensive county for renting in Indiana, which is like, really? But I think that's the market. There just aren't that many places that are out there. So that 1-bedroom apartment, $1,100. Median income for that would be $42,000. That means 30% of your income goes towards housing, which 30% of your income goes towards housing. That makes makes it very tight, the rest of your budget as well. So there's a lot of different thoughts on why housing is so expensive, why rent is so expensive. In Congress, they plan to be doing something. They actually should pass this week. It passed the House and the Senate. They just have to come to a reconciliation. The 21st Century Road to Housing Act. This has such nice names. Appears about to pass in Congress. It's a comprehensive bipartisan legislative package designed to address the U.S. housing supply shortage and improve affordability. Here are a few things it claims to do. Restrictions on large institutional investors, those who already own over 350 homes, are not going to be able to buy more. Do you see that as a problem in your community, the industrial investors? Establishes a new categorical exclusion of the National Environmental Policy Act, NEPA, to bypass rigorous environmental reviews for low-impact projects such as infill development and construction of 4 or fewer units. Are you running in Indiana? Are you running into environmental problems when you're trying to do some infill or small development, or isn't that really an issue for you?
I don't think it's an issue that you have the environment, you've run into problems. It's just the process is painful and time consuming basically in infill, you're saying here's an empty lot between a bunch of stuff that's already developed. Yeah. Now I have to prove that it's not going to negatively impact and most likely this empty lot already had something on it in the past that has been demolished, right? An old house or a commercial building or whatever. But you have to go through this 30 to 60 to 90 day process and consult with tribes and all these different entities to prove that this redeveloping this one lot isn't. So, I think that's what.
Right, and that's specifically what they talked about. That's what they're trying to help out with. Another thing that was kind of innovative was HUD and program oversight. They authorized a pilot program for small dollar mortgages, less than $100,000, and whole home repair grants to stabilize aging housing stock. So if you're in your existing house and it needs some repairs, to help you get that done. Does that strike people as helpful? We all live in communities where we have older homes.
Well, we've had several calls recently of our, for lack of a better word, elderly homeowners that are trying to stay in their home, but they can't afford some of those repairs that are now just sort of out of their reach. And so that would be very helpful if we were to help with some programs like that, or just sort of any way to sort of subsidize that in some ways, especially with property taxes and all that fun. I hate to even bring that up, but forget I said that, but yes, that would be very helpful.
That's something some communities have done nationally, and in Indiana, I think, is fund home repair programs on a local level, right? Yeah. So your local community knows better than anyone what's worth investing in. Hamilton County is using some of its community development block grant money to do a home repair program specifically for folks who have been able to buy homes but can't maintain them. But to your point, that's the dream. You already have a home.
Gabe, do you have something? Agreeing. Okay. Speaking of Gabe, if you look at the charts that he has out there, he's got a good display of missing middle housing, and there's a lot of what makes that difficult to build. So I'm going to call on Gabe because he's got the charts.
Sure. Thank you. Can double fist. So one of the biggest challenges to missing middle housing, and it was touched on earlier, is zoning regulations. They just are not set up to handle the missing middle, which I would include cottage homes, cottage courts, duplexes, fourplexes, your townhome developments. In Greenwood, for example, when those products are suggested, which is somewhat rare, oftentimes they need variances, they need to go to additional public hearings just to be considered. So you have NIMBYism that comes up as well. NIMBYism is a huge problem with affordable housing. People that think that They bought the last house in Greenwood for their community, and now that next neighborhood, that next development, that's going to bring the traffic that, it is going to make Greenwood a place that they don't want to live. It's this thought that they've came to Greenwood and now they're pulling up the drawbridge behind them. But I think your question talking about missing middle, what changes are required to get there? We do need to update our ordinance. Greenwood is currently working on that with Optico's design. A little shameless plug. On the 29th, we do have a proposed first draft presentation with Optico's, where we're also looking for community input. So I'd really encourage all of you guys to attend that. Typically, the people that attend the meetings are people who are opposed to housing options, opposed to density, opposed to different development patterns. So that's another thing that needs to happen. Our development patterns need to change. We have to build neighborhoods with services where people can live and work. It cannot just be adding density. I don't think that's how we get out of this.
Dax, I'm going to call on you because there's been the proposal for the northeast corner of 144 and 135. In the plans I looked at, there was a variety of housing types in there. And if you go on social media, it probably wasn't very popular. But what problems do you have, or what problems do you see or developers have in coming to do a type of development that includes a variety of housing?
So let's define variety of housing. Really, none of the housing in that development is what we would consider affordable.
Right, no, I'm just, there are various sizes.
But you do have cottage style. You do have townhouses. You have the missing, there's somewhat an opportunity to have the missing middle in Iron Horse. There's executive housing. There's Del Webb. I guess we'll call that, I'm double nickels this year, so I can live there. So there's Del Webb. There are proposals for multifamily apartment living that don't exist necessarily, especially in the Bargersville area or in the western half of the county, period. So yes, there is a variety of houses in that development. What pushback have we received so far? How are we going to build the town of Trafalgar within our boundary? Essentially is what I've heard, because that's what it is, bigger than your town. And it's population-wise, it's 3,100 housing units, and it will be substantially bigger than Trafalgar when you include multifamily. So there's some pushback. It's a PUD, it would be a PUD, and we would definitely look at, we're in the process, town of Bargersville's in the process right now, of writing and hopefully codifying what we call it, a housing type diversity development policy. So a housing type diversity development policy.
It's got to be an acronym for that, right?
We will make one work. I just finished writing draft 2, and basically what it says, and it takes data from across the country that having different types of housing all the way from workforce to the transitional types of the missing middle to senior is healthy for the community, has been proven, especially through the 2008 transition and the pandemic transition, that those communities that had those policies in place and were attracting those types of housing were stronger on the other side of both of those historic situations in the country. So yes, but have we had some threats from Iron Horse? Yeah, to me personally. Now they're not violent threats, but they're more, run you out of town. You guys are a bunch of idiots. Traffic. It's the same thing I bought a home here and I thought that it was going to be a 2,000 person community for the rest of my life, and so therefore nobody else is allowed to move in.
I was the first one to move here, and then these people moved after me. I don't understand why. They all should stay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good question.
Carmen, what are you seeing? What are the challenges in Whiteland?
I think for us, and I'll second Gabe, our zoning ordinance is from 1970, okay? If you went back in time to the town of Whiteland in 1970, none of this neighborhood would be there. It would have been a population of, maybe 500, 700 people or so. But starting actually here at the end of the month, we are also looking at our zoning and our subdivision control ordinance and bringing those together, because those two ordinances have a lot of the same verbiage but conflicting information. And what they call that is a lot of the other communities have already done this, and they're in the process of doing this. It's called a UDO, a Unified Development Ordinance. But it kind of looks at Bargersville's finished theirs, and Franklin, no, not yet. Okay. But what that's going to do is, again, one, make the terminology match each other within those two ordinances. And secondly, give us an opportunity to learn what else this community needs. Whiteland is, I don't see us, we're not gonna plan to go south. Franklin meets us right at 400 or Paul Hand. And then going north, we kind of stop, there's a little jut up Emerson to Pushville, close to Pushville, but we butt up right to Greenwood. So our growth north and south is very limited. If we're to grow, we're likely going to go west, but then we run into Bargersville. So if they're busy worrying about Iron Horse, we might be able to get out there a little bit. But and then on the east side of the interstate, we do not have water. And to ask a residential developer to take water over there would be very unlikely. And so not saying we're not going to grow, but what opportunities do we have with the existing housing that we have? Is it not working? Sorry.
That's okay.
But with what we have and the land we have left, one, is residential make the most sense? We primarily, the vacant lots that we have in Whiteland are right here along US 31. And we have a couple of developments that are looking at us, but I look at what makes sense for Whiteland. As far as, again, going back to the zoning and hearing what our community wants. A lot of times when we have public input sessions, we don't get a lot of input. And so how do we make those decisions on what's best for our community when the community doesn't show up unless to,
Just so they
oppose
don't want something.
oppose something that might bring their quote unquote property values down. When instead it might give them an opportunity, we talk about seniors staying in place. And that's something that, if there's an opportunity, I would love to see a senior housing community in Whiteland. I say that. We have the 55 and older, but I mean something that's subsidized. We had an opportunity a couple of years ago, and I reached back out to that developer because at the time the town manager was opposed to that. And I'm like, well, you don't make the decisions, the council does. But it was something that would have been a community, a network that would have helped, I feel, would have helped seniors to move out of those single family residential, give them that community to where they could come together and, and actually it was near the library here. But have a community center, have a community within themselves to help with their mental health and making friends and different things. So anyways, I digress, but we are in preparation of kicking off our Unified Development Ordinance. I'm excited about that. A lot of times people are, saying, well, plans just cost a lot of money and then they sit on a shelf. Since I've been the town manager, we have completed a comprehensive plan. In 2025, we did just adopt in June of this year our first ever park master plan. And my goal is to not let those plans just sit on a shelf collecting dust, is to put them into action. And so this is one more piece of that puzzle to just get things moving in the right direction.
Brian, what's going on in Trafalgar? What are people objecting or what are they asking for? Or what's your vision?
Well, I had a thought real quick.
Okay.
I've heard multiple people up here invite you. So Dax, Carmen, Gabe, they said, come to the meetings, get involved, listen. It does matter. We attend meetings, a lot of you twice a month. I'm once a month, to empty rooms. We do the best we can with the information we have. We do welcome you to attend these meetings. If they're live streamed, but we want your input. They hold these meetings. They have public speaking sections in the meetings before and at the end. We welcome your feedback. You, your friends, your family, the public can impact these UDOs, the PUDs, the subdivision control ordinances, and we might touch on a little bit what that means if people in the room don't know what all these words mean. What was the question, Jody?
What's going on? What kind of growth, what are you seeing? What's your next, what are you trying to organize? I mean, Carmen talked about, Whiteland and not their zoning ordinances being in conflict and things, and I think you're the first town manager that Trafalgar's had, correct?
Yes. So a few things you've heard. I just told Gabe this before the mic was hot. I'm the first town manager of Trafalgar. We've been around since the 1800s, and they've never had leadership in that position. We have blazed all the new trails, and we blazed them with the bush hog. It has been an uphill battle, so we don't have strategic plans. We don't have park plans. We do have subdivision control ordinances. They're outdated. We try to improve what we can, but I'll also give you this. In Trafalgar, I am the town manager. I am the building commissioner. I am the planning director. I am the planning review board. I am the president of Planning and Zoning Commission. I am the president of BZA. I am HR. I don't have staff. So our challenges are what we have to come up with and catch up with the resources we don't have. And that's tricky to do it well, right? I don't want to half-ass anything. So I try to do the best I can with what we have. And you talking about me over there? So
Somebody had to be the first one. Expletive this meeting.
that's how you know I'm honest. That's how you know I'm honest. You just get the real me all the time. But there's a lot going on. I mean, I am the biggest cheerleader for my neighbors. Johns County is an incredible county. We are blessed to be a part of Johnson County. We're blessed to live in Johnson County, but we're also cursed with the cost of living in Johnson County. I have a police force that can't afford to live in Johnson County. Majority of my police department, I'm gonna say 90% of them, rent or live outside the county because they can't afford housing. That's a problem. So it's something I advocate for. We have a lot going on. I think Trafalgar's future is to be the place to call home with high quality of life amenities that we can provide through development, careful development. But yeah, there is a lot going on, but we are currently in the phase of blazing a whole lot of new trails, but trying to do it really, really well.
What kind of interest have you seen from developers? Not specifics, but.
I'm going to get honest.
Are you? Yeah.
I won't curse. Historically, the reason why I stepped into Trafalgar a few years back, I came in as contractual building commissioner. I moved to Trafalgar 5 years ago. I'm an import, and I started attending public meetings. I saw what was happening. I saw what was being done with the town. Trafalgar has always, what I'll say, been preyed upon. They've been taken advantage of because of lack of resources, lack of staffing, lack of oversight, and people use that to their advantage. Man, I'm sorry. I keep getting lost. So the cycle I'm trying to break is Trafalgar is still being preyed upon. And I have had multiple meetings with developers who think that they can come to Johnson County, that far little corner that nobody really cares about or has cared about, and put whatever they want there. And they think they're going to push us around or convince somebody, and they've never met a person that's willing to push back. I'll say Trafalgar probably historically has been desperate for any attention, right? So we would jump all over any opportunities historically, not now. So we had a 564 home development. The houses were going to start under 175. They really thought that they were selling me something great. And it's not that I personally firmly believe that that's an opportunity we need to meet. I do not believe in lumping those together. We need diversified housing. And so I less than politely sent them out the door after our meeting. And I told them they were welcome to come back, but I need something more promising, something with walking trails. There wasn't a single park. One entrance, 564 homes, one way in, one way out. This isn't thoughtful. There's no beautification standards, there's nothing. So my challenges currently are we're sitting at tables we've never sat at before, but we have an opportunity to turn things down because we're okay. But we need to be very careful and very selective in what we do because we are setting ourselves up for our future right now.
Sometime you have to tell me the story of how you got brick in the front of DG Market. That's the only thing I've ever seen that looks actually nice for DG Market. Amanda?
No, you have those standards.
Well, what I was gonna say was Carmen brought up something that kind of got overlooked, and she said, we don't make the decision. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Or other people on the board, can you talk a little bit more about that process or like what that looks like?
So I will give my opinion, but my pal next to me says we are an extension of that elected council, of which we are, because the town managers are appointed by the town councils. The town councils are the elected body, the folks that you all vote for. They choose to put a town manager or there are some communities that aren't here tonight that don't have a day-to-day administrator to make sure that things are being followed the way that we should follow them. And so that's where, I have my personal opinions, but then I have what the consensus. We have 5 town council members. That doesn't mean that they all agree. We are not a rubber stamp council. There are a lot of things that they will all vote in favor of or not in favor of, but there are some things where they have been split. Chickens was one of those. But and that's where none of us up here are the elected folks. And so when we get into those discussions on what your community wants, are they really answering for what the community wants, or what do they personally want or not want? And again, if I have one council member that lives in a very large subdivision in Whiteland, and the items that are important to them aren't necessarily the same items that are in another neighborhood they're important to them, but then they're bringing it to the council to make a decision for the entire town, but it's only one neighborhood that has an issue or has a proposal to prevent
Chickens?
chickens. So I'll just stick with chickens. I won't go into the other issue, because it's a subdivision that abuts another community where they didn't want it to connect. So that'll allude to that. But we want that connectivity, because if something happens, they have no way to get out of their subdivision. That's a public safety issue. So, and in planning world, that is something that is very important to planners, is to make sure there's that connectivity, the two ways in and out. I mean, it's just like your house. You have an ingress and an egress. You should have 2 ways in and out. And if something happens in this particular subdivision, at a certain point in that neighborhood, they have no way out. I mean, they can leave on foot, but they cannot drive out. So, anyways, again, none of us are elected up here. We do represent the elected. They put us in the position. They can take us out of that position. Some of us are, I have a council member that says I'm only, well, not me, but I'm only 3 votes away from not having a job. So that's the stress of being an appointed person, but it's not going to hold me back from doing what we feel is right for the community, and setting again that foundation of having the plans in place and making sure the elected folks understand or are educated on how we need to do things. So
There's a lot of people in the room. I haven't heard a thing from them. And I'm a little curious as to why, but what is the ultimate goal of the evening? And are we missing having a conversation about that ultimate goal? So if the ultimate goal is housing type diversity, somehow finding ways to make it affordable, what are the impediments to that? Are there local, national, statewide impediments? And we need to begin a process to start finding solutions. It would be great to hear from the folks that are sitting and staring at us. And we heard from you that you said that it's somewhat painful of a process to go through zone planning and zoning, right? There's a reason why we go through that process. Because if you don't, there are, I think, 8 counties in Indiana that still don't have planning and zoning.
I think that's about right.
I think there's 8 counties. I'm looking at you, Gabe, because I got 2 planning. I got 2 planning. You drive to those 8 counties and you'll probably drive back there and go, man, I'm glad we have planning and zoning.
Oh, for sure.
I'm glad that painting process exists. But if those are some of the things that we need to hear from, because what we hear from is this. The council members are just laying in their pocketbooks with the money from the developers. That is the most untrue statement on social media. They go, well, maybe it's not.
But it ranks right up there.
It ranks in the top 10. That does not exist, and that does not happen. So that's the vitriol that the councilors get every time somebody wants to come in and do something new. And they sometimes have to listen to that vitriol, because I'm not sure there are other solutions that are being presented to the elected officials.
So I'm going to ask, if you've looked at different kind of housing, I know my wife and I would like to downsize. It's like, where? I need a smaller house and the money's the same. What did you experience in your housing ventures or attempts to find new housing? Or what do you hear is the impediment to building a diversity of housing? Say I live in a development and there's been empty spot of land next to us forever. And ours started being built about 1998 or so. And that land was empty and it was farmed. And they couldn't develop it because there's no sewer. So Greenwood brings in sewer. And guess what? There's housing. And my neighbors are just irate that someone's going to build housing on this land. And why didn't they zone against that? And they showed up at a meeting we're in the county. They showed up at a meeting and they were screaming and yelling and just, you can't do this. You can't put houses back there. You're going to flood us out. And it's like, no, you're not. It's really, what did you think was going to be built there? Something's going to be built.
So would they rather have it sit empty, or do they want the Buc-ee's to go there?
Yeah, and
What's the answer?
I'm on my HOA board, I'm on too many things. And the homes that back up against it have a flooding problem. Because when our developer planned this development, he told the neighbors next door, the guy who owned the land at the time, that he didn't have to do anything, whatever water rolled off his land, we'd take. And didn't quite build enough of a storm system to keep it out of people's backyards. And now you go to people and you say, but it's a good thing they're gonna build homes there, because now they have to keep their water on their property. You're a liar. You can read the code. Yeah. So who's looked for a house or an apartment and couldn't find what they were looking for because it was the wrong size, it was too expensive, whatever. Okay?
I'm actually in a really blessed situation. My husband owns our home and has for 10 years, but we were looking at maybe upgrading, and in that ideally we wanted something around like a 4-bedroom, 2-bath, and it's just not possible to find that under $300,000. And I am a small business owner. I've worked for myself for 10 years. I don't have a big salary, but I'd love to own property. I'd love to own a home. And I think in my life, I've gotten to see a lot of different styles of housing. And so I'd be really curious to see like more communal style living. And I liked what several people were saying about having community centers as a part of the housing development plan. So that's really exciting to hear. But I'm mostly rural. So, yeah.
Can I add one thing onto that? So I think there's a really interesting opportunity that we have, because we do a community preference survey every 4 years. And it's asking people that live in the region, what's important to you, what styles would you prefer, actual people here. And the last few times that we've done this, there's a tremendous overlap in preferences for smaller housing types, walkable communities across generations, across cohorts of ages. So I do think there definitely is a need for the age restricted communities. I'm fine with those, but don't miss out on the opportunity for mixed generational. Like it's healthy for both generations to be around each other. I think about my neighbor who's older than me, and he teaches me to cut angles for framing and stuff, and I scoop his snow, so it's a wonderful trade-off, and we learn and we enjoy each other, and I think it helps both generations, and I think it builds healthy communities. The other things I point to that comes up, trails are super, super important to people. Connectivity, super important to people. Parks, super important to people. The other thing that we started doing this in 2022 after things started opening up again. And so we changed the wording a little bit, because back then it was after the pandemic or since the pandemic, but now we have changed the wording a little bit. But we've asked people, what's more important to you? And the number one thing, being close to family. And so if you think about grandparents wanting to be closer to grandkids, parents want to be closer to their kids, it gets really hard to do if the only thing that we're ever going to build is single family detached homes. And so the other thing I would point to is that the first projects are always the most challenging, and they're always the scariest. But the places that we see that have the most of the actual attached product have higher preferences for that. And it's one of those things where after you get to see it and you interact with it, you see all the amenities that tend to come along with that. You see the coffee shops and Pilates studios and donut shops and all the great stuff that gets anchored by that. It really contributes to everybody else's quality of life too. And you think about all the infrastructure that then comes in because of those developments. It's super important to think past just what the housing type does. There's a slide that's probably been going up behind me,
I
but
just pulled it up, you've got I can bring, I could.
no, it's fine, but you'll see it flow through. But the thing that we've been saying since 2018 is communities need to think of the right price, the right product, and the right location. Those three things got to go together. And that's a job that Gabe gets to do. I just get to say it.
Well, I can build off that a little bit. So we did finish our comprehensive plan where we looked at some focus areas for what we called more walkable areas. So that's something that we're going to be talking more about with our Unified Development Ordinance. There's kind of like a saying that like a vacation is just a trip to a walkable neighborhood somewhere else. And if I think about my travel habits, that's definitely true for me. We're just not building enough of these walkable communities. Historically, this is how our communities developed. Somewhere along the way, we adopted a lot of zoning regulations that made that difficult. It became difficult to get loans for those products. And we started to either build single family homes, or when the pressure got too large, an apartment would show up, a larger scaled apartment.
Luxury.
And there's nothing, and they all say luxury, no matter what they are. But
We don't want those kind of people who wouldn't live in a luxury apartment.
there's really nothing in between that it is being developed at scale. And that's why these areas have become special. They've become expensive to live in. They're areas that you travel to that a lot of them are unaffordable now because our zoning ordinances aren't producing them, loans aren't creating them. So I'm hoping with the comprehensive plan, people have talked about areas where they'd like to see this, and we're going to try to set up the framework that will allow this to be developed. Kind of lost my train of thought there, but
Can I tee up a question for you?
you
Actually,
can.
I'm curious. So one of the things that we learned very quickly in talking about this stuff is when you talk about like a duplex, a triplex, a quad, a flat six, or whatever else, some places have done an exceptional job at matching the aesthetics and the architectural style of the community that it's in. And there's example of this in Indianapolis, there's a couple of pockets where you'll drive by them 1,000 times and you'll never notice, oh, that's a duplex. Oh, I never noticed that. Or there's like 4 or 5 apartments within one thing. How do you, from a planning perspective, how do you consider the architectural style and the aesthetics when you talk about missing middle?
I'm glad.
Oh, yeah, sure. So we'll just share.
I'm breaking every mic I touch, so I'm glad you asked that.
Magnetic field over here.
One of the things we're doing right now with our unified development ordinance is we're doing a hybrid code where we are having walkable standards and we are having more of the Euclidean typical zoning standards that people are used to. Hybrid does not mean these are mixed together. These are separate from each other. I think a lot of communities try to do a hybrid code and they try to mix kind of a walkable and auto-centric zoning together, and it just doesn't work. They need to be separate. So we have designated areas of Greenwood as walkable or more traditional zones. And in those zones, we're going to be using form-based zoning, or at least that's what I hope we get adopted by our council. Form-based zoning is a little bit more concerned about the scale of the development, how the buildings interact with the public ways, the sidewalks, the streets. They have different street types. A lot of the streets in Greenwood are very wide. They are not complete streets with bike paths or walking. They may have a sidewalk, a couple feet off the road. So the streets look different, the houses look different. It looks more at the form of the development and the scale, the massing, the entry features, and less about the use. The use is still important, but it's secondary. Our typical Euclidean zoning, which I think most communities have in Indiana, the first thing you look at is the use. How big is the residential lot going to be? Is it commercial or is it industrial? Doesn't allow for maybe a maker shop to be in a downtown. Well, that's an industrial use. How did it get there? So that's how we're tackling the scale for these walkable developments. We're using form-based zoning. And for me as a planner, it's very exciting that I have the support to explore that. And I'm really hoping that it's something that turns out well for Greenwood.
Gabe, where does the pushback come on things like that? Is it council? Is it people who don't understand? Is it residents who don't want to build it?
It could be all. No, I think our council's been pretty receptive to a lot of what we're doing. I think people get scared about the word density or multifamily. So we have to be more specific when we're talking about those words. Sometimes 4 townhomes attached to each other in Greenwood is referred to as multifamily. And people instantly think of, a 10-story, large scale apartment that's going to loom over their home, even though it might be a neighborhood scale townhome development. So we have to be more specific as planners, as people from the community, as developers, when we talk about our products. We can't just say it's multifamily. We have to keep being more detailed. Because we do see, it's multifamily. That's dense, that's traffic, that's, I'm opposed. People shut down. And then we do the density work. Opticos has done a good job. We're working with them on our ordinance. And they had this PowerPoint, they talked a little bit about density. They had people guess the density of different developments. And it would show, it would look like a home. And it would say, guess the density of this. And they have something that maybe looked more like an apartment that you're typically used to seeing. And people would guess the densities and they would be way off. The home was actually a part of a fourplex. And, you can't really tell because of the way it's designed and developed. So I think we got to get away from using density as kind of like the end all be all, because that really doesn't reflect what you see. A lot of people saw the nice looking home and said, yeah, I want that in my community. But there's some disconnect when the density got brought up. But our big pushback is from the public. They don't want anything that's not a larger lot. And if they have a large lot, they're very concerned about their property values. Even though it's been shown a lot of these mixed, diversified density communities with missing middle housing increase property values. But we see a lot of pushback from residents, and that gets to council. I mean, they're the ones that show up to these meetings. So, you know, I think it's a learning process for everyone in Greenwood, including me, including the planners.
Got a couple of questions coming from the audience. We'll go with Amanda first, since you were hand up.
I know what I'm doing here. So when I'm asking this question, so the state has proposed, has both implemented legislation and is looking at additional legislation when it comes to making housing affordable. Is what they've done already, is that helping or hurting? And is what they are looking at continuing to implement, are they on the right, sorry, you guys know what I'm doing here. Are they on the right track, or are they really, really missing it here? Is that gonna be beneficial in the long run?
They're off track. And I think everybody up here would agree. They're taking a lot of the oversight and control from the local jurisdictions on making decisions on what's best for our communities and where it's best for our communities. They're trying to open it up that we can't say, no, it doesn't belong here, it belongs here. They're trying to take that control away from us, which is ultimately going to negatively affect all of our communities.
So, anybody know what Pulte makes profit-wise on selling a home? Anybody want to guess?
Not as much as we think. I'm gonna say not as much as we think.
24.4%. You'll not find a return anywhere on earth that's better than that return. So the market's at about 7% right now.
How expensive are Pulte's homes?
Anywhere
Just
from
mention.
300. You can find a Pulte home in the threes. You can find a Pulte home in the $5 million.
Just to like give it,
So
Our average in Greenwood, I think when you look at Sagebriar, I think they're about 5, 6. They're around there for pretty modestly sized homes.
Yeah.
I'm not picking on them. That's what they do, right? That's how their company works. They're a publicly traded company. And in this particular free market system that we have in this country, they want to make money. That's what they do. I'm just saying that from an affordability perspective, that whether it's a $300,000 home or an $800,000 home, does anybody want to guess what the fees are to build that home in town of Bargersville?
Exactly the same.
It's $11,000. $11,000 of your home, that home's cost to build it are fees.
Regardless of the value of the home.
It doesn't matter. It's $11,000, right? So,
If you're building a 1-bedroom or a 10-bedroom.
but that's minimal compared to, if you're buying a $300,000 house, $11,000 of that is a part of the cost of goods sold, right? A part of the cost to build that home is passed on to the buyer. That's a pretty minimal portion of the actual money that goes into building a home. And majority of those fees are actually, I won't say to protect the current resident, but they're park impact fees and their road impact fees and their utility capacity fees. So that basically we're saying you're taking capacity from the current residents so that they're not negatively impacted by your development. We'd like you to pay an upfront fee so that we can continue to build parks and we can, as the place grows. So 24.4% of the $700,000 home, if you do the math, I went to Ball State, I don't do math very well, is a lot more than $11,000, right? A lot more, $175,000, right? 25% of 700 is, I think, 175,000. If I did that right, you can call my Ball State people and we can fix it. I think why I wanted to be here tonight was we need to be told as local municipal officials, first, we want to know the myths of what everybody thinks is happening as to why housing is unaffordable. So we need to get down to the brass tacks of what actually is causing the issue, number one. Number two, can we locally, because all of us up here are solving problems. You know what the vision of the town of Bargersville is? Make the residents' lives better tomorrow than we found it today. That's our vision. So we're all problem solvers up here. And I'm going back to your question finally. Does that House Bill 1001 solve the problem? No. End of period. Does not solve the affordability issue. You can take those fees away at $11,000, and guess what? I bet that house is still going to cost you $700,000. It's not going to cost you $680. I'm not going to try to do that.
Real quick, the other thing that bill, that legislation did do is it gave Brian another task that he has to complete. Because now there's a housing report that each municipality is responsible for reporting back to, is it DLGF? So we're almost July. We still don't know what exactly we're supposed to be reporting back. It's due January 1, 2027 for 2026 data. We not only have to keep track, we already keep track of like our housing permits and so on and so forth. But the other thing is that it's adding in what are your rental prices. Well, I can call up an apartment complex that we have in Whiteland and say, tell me what your 1, 2, 3 bedroom apartment rental prices are. But I also have, we mentioned that 800-pound gorilla that owns more than 350 properties that we've got quite a few back here. American Homes for Rent, since we're name dropping. We would have to figure out who of those properties which ones of those are rentals, what are they charging? If we can get them to respond. We had one back here that had a service leak underneath their driveway. We had to shut the water off to the resident so that person did not have running water for a few days, could not go without running water. We could not get a hold of them. The town fixed the problem, even though we are not supposed to be fixing service leaks. That is the property owner's problem. But anyways, so we've just added more work to Brian and to those that are doing all these housing reports, but we're not even sure what we're supposed to be reporting just yet. In the town of Whiteland, we collect on a single family residential, $200 is our flat fee and 5 cents per square foot. So we're bringing in about $400 per home that goes up for our true building expenses of what we basically capture back for inspections and the various things that we have to do. So
We also don't know the purpose of gathering this data either, correct?
or who's going to look at it.
So what I would like to
we're gonna
say
miss resources.
on legislature's forethought of that bill, like Carmen had mentioned, we're supposed to report for the entire 26 year of all of these things. And we have to submit it January 1st. How do you do that? That's the forethought in that bill.
And layer on top of that, SCA 1, that has now reduced your y'all's funding. So.
Who let you in here?
I know, right?
All right, I'm gonna cut you off.
She's helping you out though, I think she's helping you out because I think it is a myth that you guys, I really, honestly, we do hear people talk about, well, there's these fees that the towns are putting on. So I think, she's trying to set you up to sort of break that myth away. Similar to some of our other questions.
Yeah.
Just to give you a little bit of it.
So to piggyback on
Yeah,
that.
go for it.
There are many things that impact what the developer or builder is coming to your municipalities with and what their starting price is on the homes. It's all based on their pro forma, not ours. It's based on what they want to make the profit of, on what they're willing to put in their pocket. So anytime that there is land that's for sale, if it is overpriced and they buy that piece of ground, they now have to sell the houses for a greater cost point. But it may not be worth that actual selling price. If they need to mitigate some wetlands or fix a major drainage problem, they don't take that out of their pro forma. They put it in the cost of the homes.
Or build more homes.
Or build more homes. So one of the major myths is that everyone sitting up here who's either administering the regulations or communicating with, those that do what we do, we can't impact that. We can't change a developer's mindset or a builder's mindset on how much money they're willing to make or not make. It comes down to the integrity of who's coming to us to develop.
Suzanne?
So we're talking about affordability, and I'll make this as quick as I can. Back in the 1900s, when I had my first starter home at $79,000, minimum wage was $1 less than it is now. Okay, I couldn't afford the house that I live in now. Moved to Indiana 24 years ago, looked into a great house, did the American dream, but our kids wouldn't be able to afford to do the same thing that we can do. Until we address the problem of wages and no more $79,000 houses, no more $150,000 houses, we're never going to be able to get those starter homes before 40. We can't have kids earlier. The apartments aren't available. They're going to be moving out. That income's not in our county. Trafalgar, Greenwood, Franklin, Whiteland, great communities. I live in unincorporated Johnson County, Center Grove, Morgantown, and Fairview. We don't have a planning commission. We don't, there's a sizable chunk of Johnson County that was surprised that they couldn't vote for Greenwood mayor 2 years ago.
That always happens.
Still surprised.
Yeah.
They're still surprised.
My neighbor still asks me.
Yeah. But
Oh, see.
how do we address the
They
rest
do.
of Johnson County? Yeah, how do we address the rest of Johnson County?
I
There's
will-
a big chunk of it.
And I will tell you that, I asked the Johnson County Planning and Zoning person to be here, and she's out of town. So she would have, so I'll cover that. But yeah, that's a huge problem. I mean, my first home was 1,250 square feet, 2-car garage. I moved from a 900 square foot apartment with no garage to a house that had 3 tiny bedrooms and a 2-car garage, and it was heaven. You can't build 1,250. The minimum build size that you can build in Johnson County in the unincorporated area is 1,500 square feet. That's probably some of your communities as well.
Well, and also, we don't have grocery stores that you can walk to. So
Right.
that adds to the affordability
We
problem.
don't have sidewalks to get there.
We don't have sidewalks. I mean, even though we're working on County Line Road, trying to add the bike trails and sidewalks, they're trying to address this problem, but it does not exist. There's no public transportation. All these are affordability problems that we need to address here in Johnson County.
They are, and my only response, I don't have an answer for all of your community-specific things, but housing doesn't follow municipal boundaries. So a win for Whiteland or Trafalgar or Greenwood, that's a win for the whole county. If we're developing the right kind of product, if we're developing product and getting more housing out there, that's going to help the entire Johnson County area, the entire central Indiana area. Housing is not a community issue. It's a national issue right now. I think I saw that Indiana was like one of the more affordable places to own a home, or is still a place where owning a home was maybe more cost effective than renting. So, this is a nationwide issue, and some that affects us because maybe they're moving to Indiana from a place where they were able to sell their home for a lot of money. But I would just say to support everyone up here, even if you don't have a specific plan commission that you can go to. I think support the overall goal. Come to these meetings that we've referenced and talked about, because this is going to have impacts outside of our municipal boundaries.
Indiana ranks what in housing affordability and new home building activity? What's our rank?
One.
Top 10. We have the
First.
top 10.
Number 1 in the
Iowa's
nation.
second.
But this is my thing. Will I retire here? No. Have I ever owned a home? No. Am I over 40? Yep. Indiana is 49th, only above Mississippi in terms of health. And what I look for is health, wellness, connectivity, socialization. This is a place where, yes, I want to live here now, But do I want to live here in 20 years? Absolutely not. There's nothing here that's going to attract me and maintain and keep me here. There's no bike trails. Like, we have 2 very small bike trails that are not connected, and you can walk them in. You can walk each one of them in less than 10 minutes and the other one in less than 20. That's not even something worth biking. I have not done the car since 2019. I am a commuter cyclist. When Suzanne talks about the lack
And you're
of,
alive. In this county.
since 2019, I have not owned a vehicle. And 3 years of that has been here in Johnson County. It is incredibly dangerous to get around. I see people cycling all the time on our state roads. So it's not just at the town level, it's at the state level, it's at the county level. What I want, and what I'm hearing and what I'm not hearing. So this is something that I'm a sociologist by trade, okay? So I'm always looking at what is, but what isn't. So who isn't here? Our Chin and Burmese communities are not here today. Our Native communities are not here today. Andrea is the only one today who has mentioned them, so thank you for doing that. But it was in a state of friction for you. So it's not in a state of coming together. I'm not hearing anything about environment except from Amanda and, except from Joanna, and talking about environment needing money. How are we supposed to protect the land? I want trees, I want wildflowers, I want the hummingbirds to come back. I have not yet seen one. I've seen dragonflies, not seen hummingbirds. These are the things to me that I value. Things that I'm not hearing, so the people that I'm not seeing. This is a room full of white people. I am a family that is very diverse. We have Japanese, Latino, Black in my immediate family. They're not here at the table. So if we don't have them at the table, our dear neighbors, we're missing the point entirely. So speaking of, who's not coming to the meetings, well, who are you speaking to? Who are you inviting? How are you inviting them? Those are the types of things that, to me, make community. And that's what I want to see in Johnson County, because it's here. They're just not here.
It's really hard in a community like this to get the word out, to reach people. It just is, you got the Daily Journal, love them, they're one of the sponsors that got us together this evening, but unfortunately, people don't read papers anymore. And you don't have that reach, and so there's that commonality. How do you connect those people? That is a problem, absolutely, is how do you reach out to those people and bring them in? We're running short on time, and we've danced around affordability a little bit, and I want to get Andrea to tell her story a little bit too. But I think one of the things that people think when they think of affordable housing, and I think Brian was right in saying, well, they're going to build $175,000 houses, but there's nothing there. And so this is a slide that MIBOR put together on one of their Mythbusters, is attainable can be attractive. And so these are Central Indiana affordable housing projects in Speedway, in Fishers, and in Shelbyville. And they all blend in very well with the world around them. And I know there's more pictures of around the country of that sort of thing. You look at Han, you're going, wait, Hamilton County and affordable homes? And I just did not bring any pictures. I'm sorry, I should have had them for you. But you built some really nice looking
Have
things.
flyers.
Yeah. So tell us about how you got that done. How long did it take you from, we're going to try and build homes, to the first one you built?
Well, that was before my time, but typically, so we build affordable rental housing. We know our clients earn up to 60% of the area median income for the Indianapolis metropolitan area, not for Hamilton County. So that
It'd be the
lowers
same here in Johnson County.
Yep, all the same. So for a one person household, that's about $46,000 a year, and that doesn't sound like, an impoverished, living off the system, surviving on food stamps type of existence. But the reality is, if your rent, one bedroom apartment in Hamilton County, $1,500 a month, it adds up quickly. So we apply for federal grants typically that help us underwrite the cost of building or refurbishing housing. And in exchange for accepting that money, we agree to keep rents affordable for a certain period of time. But even that is problematic, right? So we built one of our newer projects here on the cover, and we built 11 units in Fishers. It cost us more to build this in 2024 than it cost us to build 25 units in Sheridan in 2008. It's only 11 units. Only half of them are actually affordable because we needed, speaking of pro formas, it was so expensive to build 11 units in Fishers at that time. It was right after COVID that we needed the rents from the market rate units to pay for the debt to build the affordable units. And that's the reality is it's, I was kind of joking with Dax when he was talking about, the $11,000. It's not any cheaper to build affordable housing than it is to build market rate housing. We use the same drywall. We actually probably build to a higher standard than a lot of the mass production, slap it up as fast as you can builders, because we do get government grants. And so we're held to a higher standard. We typically build to LEED standards, although we don't go through the full certification process because that's an additional expense that we can't pass along to our residents. But as soon as we accept that money, and it takes typically our Fishers project, we made an offer on that in 2019. It opened in 2025. So that was slowed down by COVID and having to find more money because costs went up. But that's, it's not a short period of time. As soon as the first person moves in, the clock starts ticking. 20 years from now, that doesn't have to be affordable anymore. Because we're a nonprofit and we aren't basing all of our decisions on how much money we can make, we most likely will keep it affordable. And we would love to be able to make more of it affordable as time goes on. And how we would do that would be to apply for additional grants to reinvest in the property, and then it would have a new affordability period. But the problem is, like I just demonstrated, right? It costs more to build these 11 units in 2024 than it cost to build twice as many units 10 years earlier. So think about that. When this 20 years is over, it's going to cost twice as much to build half as many units. And if you just keep doing that over time, so sooner or later, you're spending a ton of money and you're producing almost nothing. And so we need to figure out how to keep units that are already affordable in the program, or keep them from that $79,000 house to all of a sudden being worth $400,000. I live in one of those houses. It's not worth $400,000. But the market is what the market is. And until we find tools that can help protect real estate from the market, which we are working on in Hamilton County, that's what's going to happen. We had a county commissioner who wanted to build affordable housing and thought, well, if I buy the land and developers don't have to pay for the land, then they can come in and build a $200,000 house. Wouldn't that be great? Sure. Until they sell that $200,000 house to the first buyer, and then the next day they go and sell it for $400,000, and now it's a $400,000 house. And that initial investment is gone. So that's kind of what the challenge is. And that's what we're working on, is figuring out not just how to keep building it because the need exists and isn't going away, but also, how do we preserve it long into the future so that we're not sitting here 30 years from now going, well, that was a good run, but now we need even more affordable housing and we have less.
We don't have time to get into that, but there are things you can do that maintain that beyond the 20 years. Listen, you had a question.
Yeah, I used to work deeply in affordable housing in Johnson County, but I've been out of it for about 10 years. I think what I heard you describing sounds like what I would call Section 42 housing. Is that correct?
So Section 42 is a tax credit. And so how that works is you're awarded tax credits that you sell to investors, and then you use the investors' money. Okay. It's a similar thing, only ours are grants, and it's Section 42 is an IRS.
Do those still exist in Johnson County, Amanda? Are there any of those properties?
There are affordable units that are involved in the home program, if that's what you're talking about, that have a affordability timeline. Okay. And some of those are expiring soon.
Yeah, some of
in
them
the
are
next couple.
expired.
Yes. in the next couple of years. We are exploring how we could potentially purchase those and continue to keep them affordable. We are in talks with some of the municipalities that those are associated with. They're not represented here tonight, but so it's something we've got our eye on. The Community Foundation is also helping us sort of work through that.
That's great that you guys are talking about it.
Yeah.
Because the for-profit developers, that's their plan, right? Is 30 years from now, we'll make money on this.
Well, and the reality of it is our most affordable housing is either a vacant property, someone that owns a home, but it's just sitting vacant, right? That's something that the Housing Coalition has, how many households have another house that they own, but no one's living in it, right? That's our cheapest affordable housing right now. So how can we partner with those people and maybe their first time landlords? How do we do that? So like she said, our affordable housing that we are currently going to build is our most expensive housing. So how can we look in Johnson County in ways to sort of what is affordable, how do we keep it affordable, and then what affordable homes do we build and how do we keep those affordable? And so that's sort of the conversations that we're having. And I think we're not gonna solve the affordability issue here. That's not why we invited you guys, but what the library and the Housing Coalition, to know that we're all trying to work together to create a healthy housing community is really what it's all about, right? And sort of seeing other people's perspective. So that's sort of, I'm not trying to wrap it up, but that's kind of what we see in Johnson County. Andrea Hand has done amazing things in Hamilton County and has really been a pioneer and sort of worked through these problems and is helping other communities just by the experience that they've had. So
Ross back here has a question. Ross, Heaven Earth Church, Spaces for All, Housing Coalition falls under Spaces for All. So I just wanted to give people a little background. You got a question or a comment?
Well, Dax was asking, what's the goal? And I think Gabe brought up a good point about specificity with terms. The myth that we run up against. So again, I'm the president of Spaces for All, the Johnson County Housing Coalition is underneath us. When we're at voters forums, for example, affordability or affordable housing is a big nasty word, right? So even though someone's personal experience might be how they can't afford to live, they will be politically opposed to affordable. And so one of our goals is that tonight we see that we have this coalition or this community like-mindedness to be for affordability, because affordability, one of the myths, is not housing voucher. Affordability is what Jody defined in the very beginning. It affects teachers, service workers, on and on and on. We all know that in this room. Most of the people in this room are already for it. That's why you're here. But what can help is this is a shameless plug. Follow Spaces for All on social media. Promote this stuff, champion it on your personal spheres and conversations so that the tide, it went so decisively and so quickly to not affordable. Shifting it back is that community-wide people are yes, we want affordable. We want attainable. So they don't show up at the town meeting and go, NIMBY, NIMBY, NIMBY. Instead they go, no,
YIMBY.
Yeah, because they know that how good affordable housing is for us all.
And I think that's really important to tell your housing stories, right? I think Jody was trying to draw that out of people, but the reality is our housing needs change throughout our lives, right? And we want to live in communities where we can live throughout our lives. And that's true. I can't tell you how many people we are getting interested in Hamilton County in housing because they have kids living in their basements. right? Graduated from college, kids living in their basements, all of a sudden now they're interested in affordability. And so that's the stories you gotta tell, right? It's the city councilman whose brother went through a divorce and realized, one income and you need more than one bedroom, that's a really hard. And that, so those are the stories, when you hear them, like, encourage people to tell their city councilman. If all they hear are, that's gonna lower my property values and traffic's gonna be a mess and crime's gonna go up, they listen to that, even though it is not true.
Andrea, I'm on the screen, Cumberland Cottages.
Yes.
What size are they? What's the monthly rent?
This is half market rate, half affordable. They're 2 and 3 bedrooms. The ones with, this is a rendering actually. So 2 and 3 bedrooms, half of them don't have a window up there. Those are the 2 bedrooms. And then the 3 bedrooms have it up there. 3 bedrooms, market rate is about $1,800 a month, which is way lower than actual market rate for a 3 bedroom. And the rents just vary depending on the income level of the resident and whether it's a 2 or 3 bedroom. So I think our cheapest, like a 40% 2 bedroom, I think is somewhere around $900. We're actually doing webinars tomorrow and Wednesday on the topic of what happens when affordable isn't affordable. Because one of the issues we're having is the income limits. HUD tells us, the federal government tells us this is the most you can charge. Then we subtract utilities, because our residents pay their own utilities. And then we say, okay, this is the most we can charge. But it's still too, so maybe it's $900, but to qualify for that, you need to earn 3 times that. And so ends up being a very narrow window where someone earns enough to qualify, but not too much.
Yeah.
Which makes it really difficult and essentially means there's a large segment of the population that is getting priced out of even affordable rental housing. So that's something we've got to try to figure out.
People get a better job or work more hours or, it hurts everybody in the long run.
For sure.
All right. Any more questions? If you have them, I think they might talk them into sticking around a few minutes to talk to them one-on-one. Thank you for coming out. Thank you for participating. Thank you very much for all of your information, taking the hours out of your day. You all have real jobs and come here and do this. We really appreciate it. So thank you very much. Thanks for coming.
What were the dates of the things we were invited to, the meetings?
Yes, I have a few flyers at the table back there. One is for the first draft presentation. So if you want the cottage court, that more communal living, if you want protected bike lanes, if you want that kind of thing, come to the 29th, 6 to 8 p.m. in the Greenwood Council Chambers. It's a first draft proposed presentation. It's not adopted. It's up for discussion, and we're going to be inviting Opticos to come and talk about that with us.
If you go to Spaces for All, Greenwood has a great infographic on all of their dates. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
No, you're good.
Kate, but if you go to the City of Greenwood, or you can go to Spaces for All and it'll be there. It's a great 4-part series.
And this is actually separate from that series.
Oh, okay.
We do have the 4-part series too that she had mentioned. So we have the MPO coming, MIBOR, and Health by Design. And those are coming to council meetings. Part of the intent was trying to expose and help educate our elected officials on these issues that are affecting us, because at the end of the day, they're the ones that say yes or no to the development that's coming. So it's open to the community though, and we'd encourage you to come. So both those are back on the table. Please take them, take an extra, hand it out, put it up at your local coffee shop, etc.
So your opportunity for the city of Franklin is July 6th at the city council meeting in council chambers at 70 East Monroe Street at 6 p.m. The Plan Commission has already reviewed the comprehensive plan and has forwarded it to council. And that will be the public hearing for council of reviewing that comprehensive plan. As you heard from many up here, they've talked about the comprehensive plan, they've talked about their UDOs, zoning ordinance, subdivision ordinance. Typically that process starts with the comprehensive plan. So as soon as we get ours adopted, we're going straight into the next version of updating our zoning ordinance and subdivision ordinance. We've been very fortunate that having the separate documents has worked really well. because both of those documents in 2004 and 2005 were generated at the same time. So even though there's many that put them together, if you do them at the same time, it works also. The reason that we keep them separate in Franklin is it's much easier to say to somebody, anything in this ordinance that you're not meeting goes to the Board of Zoning Appeals. Anything in this ordinance that you're not meeting goes to Planning Commission. So, but we will have those next steps in the near future. And we have 24 miles of trails, by the way.
Also, if you have some contacts for some of the people that you mentioned, we've tried to contact them and we have not had luck. So if you do have contacts of people that aren't represented here, a one-to-one relationship contact works a lot better than the groups, the nonprofits just cold calling. So if that's something that you have, please reach out to us. We'd be happy to try again.
All the coalition meeting dates are on spacesforall.org, or if you follow Spaces for All's Facebook page, they're there as well. If you're fired up about community engagement or political engagement, we have a committee for it. You can be on it like tomorrow. So.
And those meetings are virtual and in person, so if you don't want to make a trip, you can watch from wherever you are. That is a QR code. We would love to get feedback on tonight's program. You can snap the QR code, but Upstream also has paper versions back there if you'd rather do that. So up to you. Thank you very much for coming.